Hey everyone, and welcome to the inaugural edition of this podcast surrounding Altered TCG. My name is Alex, and I couldn't be happier to be surrounded by an absolutely amazing cast of people. And we're going to go through each of them just in a moment here. But we want to say thank you so much for joining us here. We're going to be doing a podcast here on a weekly basis that is going to be bringing you into the world of Altered. We're going to be talking about various topics, including the cards, the heroes, the synergies, the meta. We're joined here today by the director of Organized Play, Justin Parnell. Justin, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you guys so much for having me on the first episode. That actually means a lot to me as someone who has, been so involved in Altered and has talked to all of you separately and seen your joy and being able to take that and put all of you guys together in one podcast, and me being able to be a part of that for the first episode feels really good. So thank you guys.
No, thank you for joining us. And also we have Kawa of Lord Kana fame, the famed podcaster from the Podcana podcast. Kawa, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm great. Also huge. I share Justin's thoughts. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm hugely excited about Altered. I've been playing card games for a long time, and as soon as I saw Altered, I knew there was something special about it. So I backed the Kickstarter as fast as possible. Have been enjoying playing a multitude of decks, and yeah, I just can't wait to see where this game is going to go.
Absolutely. I remember backing the Kickstarter and being so excited just to get my hands on the product and the art, the potential synergies with all the different heroes, the factions, and the out of faction cards too. Honestly, really caught me by surprise. I think that's a really interesting thing that the game is doing well. And then of course we have Trickster, which should be of no surprise to anybody that's been on Altered YouTube at any point in time. If you heard about Altered and you went on YouTube, you saw Trickster. Trickster, how you doing, my friend?
Doing well. It was great meeting Alex and Justin at the PAX West event, and it's just so fun now that we can kind of keep our friendship going with this podcast. Nice getting to know you as well, Kawa. Yeah, I've been doing YouTube for a little bit. I feel like when I saw the Kickstarter, I just got a little bit more excited maybe than a lot of other backers, and I was like, if this game's going to succeed, I want it to have just like a big presence on YouTube, not just like in France and in French, but also in English. So I was trying to provide a little bit of that, and yeah, just happy to see how the channel's grown. It's done so much better than I expected, and so happy to be here with you all today.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, listen, we all come from detailed backgrounds in card gaming and content creation. And being the introductory episode of this podcast, I think it'd be fair to start with a little bit of an introduction here. And Justin, I'd actually like to start with you because of all of us, you are by far the most storied with what you've been doing from a content perspective. So why don't you give us a quick breakdown of what you did in the past and, where you see the future?
Well, I've been in TCGs for a really long time. I started playing TCGs in 1997, which, Trickster, were you alive then?
I was not alive.
Oh my!
I was not alive. I was almost alive.
We're so old, man. Oh my god!
I know. Yeah, I knew you were, Alex. You were in the. I think we're in the same age range. But I started my first TCG was the first Star Wars TCG. Now there's been like 8 of them since then, but I think like Decipher made this Star Wars TCG 1997. Then I moved on to playing Pokemon, and then I started playing Magic in 1999, and I've been playing Magic ever since. So for 25 years, little over 25 years now. And I started making Magic content in 2008. I was writing general articles for Star City Games, a couple, and then I got picked up as a regular author for the Cube format, which is my favorite format to play in Magic. And then I started making Commander content in 2013. And I was the host of a YouTube show called Commander Versus, which is the longest running paper play Commander, I guess the Commander show on YouTube that is exists. It's still going on. I'm obviously not a part of it anymore, but I did that and then have done several podcasts along the way. I was the host of the Think Twice podcast, which was a Magic and pop culture podcast, and then the 540, which was a Cube podcast, and I've done a whole bunch of other content along the way. But somewhere in there, starting in 2013, I started actually being on the kind of the inside of the industry as the purchasing manager for Star City Games, where I was there for 10 years. And then as of last year, a little under a year ago, I got scooped up by Equinox to assist with this amazing project in Altered. So that's how I got to where I am right now.
And very specifically, like, what is it that you do with Equinox and Altered?
So specific is an interesting word because we're a very small company. So everyone has job titles. No one their role is specific. We all do so much. We're a pretty small studio. We just launched our first game and Altered just last week. Not even a week ago by the time that we're recording this podcast. So my official title is the Organized Play Manager for North America. In reality, I am responsible for all of the things that are happening in North America and in South America. So this has to do with organized play. This has to do with distribution, retailer relations, influencer managing, marketing. So basically everything on this side of the world, I am responsible for. Now I have a lot of help. We're an excellent team at Equinox. It is an extremely collaborative environment. So it's certainly not just me being solely responsible for everything, but those are kind of the things that I overview. And then of course, heavily involved in creating and instituting the organized play programs for Altered. So everything that you see with organized play, I've been a part of that in some form or fashion, whether that's at the local level, whether that's at the convention level, or beyond as we get into next year with larger Altered events across the world. So it's a whirlwind for everyone that works at Equinox. Like I said, there's no single person that their job description is fully describing what they do for the company, but we're just so thrilled to have launched this game that everyone's worked so hard on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Altered TCG is doing a lot of very interesting things in the organized play space. Do you want to like highlight a couple things that Altered's doing particularly unique in organized play?
Absolutely. So one of, I will say my favorite thing, and this was when I was in the process of coming on to Equinox, for Altered, I really felt like we had a special ability to do some things that other card games are not able to replicate. No paper card games are able to replicate because of the digital aspects of Altered. And something that I loved from my childhood was a program that Wizards of the Coast ran called Magic Player Rewards. And Magic Player Rewards was basically just saying, for every event that you play in, you get points for playing in that event. And then at the end of the season, we will send you paper cards. Well, that program was awesome as a player, incredibly difficult as a publisher because the cost associated with it was just impossible to really manage. So it became difficult for them to continue to do it. Now, for Altered, that's not the case for us because we have a lot of kind of digital aspects to our game. So I wanted to try to find a way to bring back this way to reward players for just playing. Just go to your local store and play. Go to a convention and play. Just sit down and play Altered. Doesn't matter if you win or you lose. I just want you to be able to play the game and enjoy it and then get rewarded for it. So this is where the conception of the Adventure Pass came from. And again, just like everything else with Altered, there is no thing that we do that is just one person's thought or idea. We all work together very collaboratively. So myself, the rest of the marketing department, the game design, art, making sure that we can all put our input in to make sure that we are providing something that is special and unique to Altered. So the Adventure Pass is exactly that. Since we have the way to digitally track when and how people are playing Altered, we want to be able to reward players for being able to do that. And something that was really important to me is to do that in a way that was really easy for stores to do. Like I said, I was a retailer for a long time, was involved in creating some large-scale events for Magic and other card games. And one of the most difficult things to do is what is kind of known in the retail world as reporting. And that is basically saying, I have to send all of this data for people that played in my events to whatever organizer or publisher it is so they can have this information for themselves to be able to do what they need to do with it. And with Altered, because we are kind of digitally focused, we can remove that effort, that additional frustration from retailers to be able to do this ourselves and say, you know what, you just make the event, run it, complete it, and we'll handle everything else. So it benefits retailers, it benefits players, and it lets us see people be able to be engaged in the game that we care so much about.
I like that a lot because it essentially lowers the barrier for entry for retailers, take a little stress off their backs, which hopefully helps for the adoption of Altered TCG ultimately as we're kind of launching the game out into the world here. Now, Trickster, we'll move on to you here. Now, Trickster, I know less about, right? We just recently met, and I mean, I've been watching your content for a long time, and I actually joked that one of my favorite things about your content is the music you play. It like immediately identifies your videos. I absolutely love it. And then, of course, your amazingly positive personality, and also your incredibly analytical approach to your content, right? I think that you have a brilliant mind for the game. And so I'd be curious to know where you started with content, what games you played in the past, and of course, what got you into Altered TCG.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely feel like I'm on the beginning of my trading card game journey at this point. I started playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually, was the first game in middle school for me. And I really liked it a lot. I started playing with one friend, but I kind of have this problem with games where I just like get too strategic, do too much research, and then none of my friends want to play with me anymore. So that was kind of the start of things for me where I was playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And no one that I knew really wanted to play with me anymore. So I kind of turned to the online and then started going to competitions and things. At the time, I still didn't even know how to drive yet, so I had to like make people take me and stuff. But yeah, I definitely started my competitive journey with Yu-Gi-Oh! And then one of the games I played a lot in high school and college is called Shadowverse. And I was playing it online. There is a trading card game version that has come out since, but I was playing that a lot. And for 1 year, I was ranked number 2 in North America for like pretty much like 3/4 of the year or something. They have qualifiers for the Japan tournament, and to this day, it's sad. I got 4th place and top 3, got to go to Japan, so I just barely missed out on that. But that was a lot of like my player experience in card games. With all of these, I've always had fun joining teams and just like finding people online, even if they live all around the world, that I can work with to get better at the game. And so I've already joined a team for Altered. I'm on the Exalts team right now, which is just like a pretty open community of about like 40 players right now, of people who were already interested in the game even before the retail release, and we've just been like playing and testing out decks and like being able to be opponents for each other and playtest partners. So that's kind of like the journey that I've been coming along. I have mostly up to this point been a player, and I've like gone to a couple nationals or things for different games, but I've always wanted to get into content creation, and I just felt like this was the perfect time for a new game like Altered. It's kind of hard. It was like a little intimidating for some of these old games with people who are so well established to just try and like break in, but I was like, oh, here's like a new game that needs some content creators, and I feel like there was an opening that I wanted to take. Besides, though, playing, I have done a bit of like commentating for Shadowverse. For the most recent couple of years, I haven't really been a player anymore, but instead I've just been like one of the lead casters for like the Pan America region, essentially just like any of the big tournaments. I was on there as like a caster and kind of staying involved in the community like that. So that's something that I've enjoyed a lot in the past, and would be open to doing like more in the future. And so yeah, now just trying to balance for Altered. I'm still trying to figure out which way I'm trying to go. Am I trying to like go the content creation route primarily, or go the competitive route? We'll see what happens, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Very interesting to know, though, however, that you did win a very early tournament for Altered TCG. So it would appear as though you're doing both very successfully thus far. So maybe having to pick one or the other isn't quite necessary yet because you're doing both very well. Kawa. Kawa is someone I've known for a very long time. In fact, Kawa, you're one of the first people in content that I ever had the pleasure of meeting in New York City. Why don't you actually run us down your experience in games, card games, content creation specifically, which I know you have a storied history there as well, and what you're doing now?
Sure thing, yeah. So my card game journey actually started probably a lot later than most people, and it started on the digital side of things. I played Hearthstone for many years. Absolutely loved the game throughout all of the different expansions that came out. Was never a super competitive player, played the game quite casually, but then the more expansions came out and the more I kind of played the game, I always wanted to improve my rank and stuff like that. I dropped off the card game scene for a little bit, kind of throughout COVID and stuff like that. And then similar to kind of the story you were talking about, Trickster, I was just in this space. I always kind of figured I wanted to do content creation, but there was nothing I felt extremely passionate about. And as much as I loved card games like Hearthstone, there was already this like, hugely established scene of successful content creators and competitive players. So Marvel Snap was announced as a new game that was coming out, and I knew Ben Brode, who previously worked on Hearthstone. It's like, oh, Ben Brode's made a new game. I better go check this out. So the first day the game was announced, I made a brand new YouTube channel. I did coverage talking about, how to play the game. I remember the game wasn't available in Europe during the beta, and somehow I knew that I could not go a whole, whatever it was, 4 months of not playing the game and watching everyone else play. So but by enough begging, I think I managed to get myself an invite into the beta, and I just started kind of creating content from there. And it was quite kind of casual at first, and it was just highlighting decks that I kind of enjoyed at the time. And then as things progressed, then the channel started to grow. And then I also recognized the space within Marvel Snap that was missing, which was there was no real kind of competitive scene. We had a brand new game mode announced, which is battle mode, which basically just allows you to kind of face off against your friends. And myself and 2 other creators within the community, we said, I think this would be a great opportunity to really highlight this new game mode, show what like an in-person Marvel Snap event could be like, because it's the whole kind of snapping mechanic where if you're stood directly across from your opponent, can you kind of hold your poker face? Do you have the right cards in your hand? And with myself and a few friends, I managed to bring together 16 content creators to New York City in February of 2023. We hosted the first in-person Marvel Snap event. The developers came out, they filmed the event. It was like probably one of the proudest things I've ever done in my life. It was like a huge achievement. I was lucky enough to meet Alex there, who I hugely admired within the scene. And since then, I kind of worked on a few other grassroots tournaments, hosted some other in-person events, did some professional casting for Marvel Snap for the limited competitive scene that I had. And then my journey after Snap was I kind of toned down the content creation side. I kind of got back into the industry that was working. I graduated college, right? So I kind of got into the job that I wanted to. And then Lorcana came out, and Lorcana has been my first physical card game I've played, and I've absolutely fallen in love with it. I think everything from the mechanics to the art to the community especially has been absolutely outstanding. And I started a podcast with a few of my friends that I knew from Marvel Snap who were also playing Lorcana. And it just kind of went from there. And our main focus of the podcast was really honing in on the meta and competitive decks, because we all played Marvel Snap together, but I think at its core, it is very much a casual card game. And we felt like we really lacked that competitiveness. And we said, you know what, we really want to pursue this for Lorcana. And they said from the start that they were planning to do some more competitive events as the months kind of rolled out and more sets came along. And I'm proud to say that we're the #1 Lorcana podcast at the moment. And it's been an absolute blast. I'm actually heading to a major European Lorcana tournament tomorrow, and you best believe I'm bringing some Altered decks with me. I'm going to introduce more people to Altered. But yeah, that's like my main journey. I remember I discovered Altered a while ago when it was announced. And I always kept my eye on the Kickstarter, and it's I'll be honest, it's the art and the mechanics that drew me to the game. They were just absolutely outstanding. The game is like so unique, and it captures every element of it so well. It's so strategic as well in terms of the kind of I go you go pacing of the game. And I've been delighted to play it ever since. I was so happy when I received my Kickstarter cards. And like literally just today as we're recording this podcast, Board Game Arena client like went live so we can use our collections, and I've been jamming some games against some of my close friends, and it's been a blast. So for me personally, I'm super excited to see how the Altered scene is going to develop, more new content creators and players who are going to pick up the game, highlight the game. And like I said, through my history with Marvel Snap and Lorcana, particularly interested to see a competitive scene start to grow, and possibly participate in these larger scale events. Maybe cast 1 or 2. That would be pretty cool. But that's my journey with card games so far, and I'm super excited for the future of Altered.
It's remarkable because, like, for me, I picked up on so many, like, just connections with each of you in the stories that you guys had, right? And it's so funny how, like, as content creators and as people who just simply love card games, and that's what propels us to be in the space in the first place, we often have these common connections which bring us into these spaces, right? And you know, like with Justin, like you mentioned, starting Magic in 1999, I started Magic in 2000, and I remember learning how to play Magic sitting on the floor of PAX East in Boston, because at the time we got goodie bags, we got like these backpacks, and they gave us starter decks for Magic. And I remember we waiting for Will Wheaton's speech, his famous welcome home speech for PAX, and we were sitting on the concrete floor of the convention center, like in line to get into the hall, and we opened up our goodie bags, and sure enough, there were Magic decks in there, and that's where we started playing, right? And it was a really cool experience. So like that really resonated with me, and like in Trickster, like it's so exciting to get into something new, like as you had mentioned, and be at a grassroots level to just kind of like explore what this game is. It feels like any deck can be the best deck in the world, and the best deck for you is the best deck that you design with your uniques and everything else that you have, your unique collection, and take that into the digital realm as we can with Board Game Arena. And Kawa, like you talking about the competitive scene, like again, I competed in New York. It was a ton of fun, you know, and the competitive side, I think, of games is really it's aspirational content that I think that really benefits a lot of players, and that's why I'm so happy Justin's here as someone who obviously is well in tune with organized play. I think that's a big thing that a lot of people are interested in, right? That aspiration of being able to design a deck and then, you know, build that adventure pass, but then maybe going into an open qualifier or something like that in the future, right? That's really awesome stuff. And like for me, I take pride in the fact that, you know, I have a couple decent competitive results at Twitch Rivals for Marvel Snap's launch. I did finish second, which is great, losing only to the storied Moyen of the Podcannon podcast. And then, you know, and I finished fourth at an event where I dressed up as Santa Claus. That was exciting. But at the end of the day, what I mean to say is that, like, these types of events and these types of competitions, they really do bring out a community, not just of competitive players, but everyone that just simply loves the game and wants to see that competitive scene flourish. So I don't know. It really resonated with me, each one of you guys, because in some ways, you touched on everything that I love about content creation, everything I love about card games, and everything I love about Altered as well. So sincerely appreciative to have each one of you here today. And that's going to take us to our next topic here, which is the core topic of today's conversation, which is our favorite faction thus far and some of our early deck building. And so I'm going to pass it off to Justin here. Justin, now obviously it's not quite a fair question because I think Justin has a little more experience under his belt as to what he could be building and designing and stuff like that. So Justin, I'll pass to you. What has been your favorite early faction and perhaps a deck or two you've been playing with?
All right, so my favorite faction is not the same as my favorite singular deck, so I'll start with that. But my favorite faction comprehensively is Yzmir. My favorite hero in the game is Acacia, which is, even though it's one of the starter heroes, it is still one of my absolute favorites. I think that's a hero that rewards understanding how all of the other decks and cards in the game function extremely well. And the better that you know that, the better you can take advantage of that after you ability on Acacia. It's a lot of fun. So I am really looking forward to continuing to build what I feel like is the best Acacia deck possible as we kind of go along. But my actual favorite deck is not a Yzmir deck. It is a Lyra deck, and that is Finn and Crowbar. And I have really been working on a Finn and Crowbar deck that, you know, I haven't lost with it yet in about, you know, only about 15 games, but still going pretty good. I've played 2 games on Board Game Arena today since it launched. With some folks, including taking down a Waru, which is probably going to be an early terror for people in the competitive scene. So, yeah, Finn is really a card that you really want to try to build in the way that takes as much advantage of its abilities as you possibly can. And Lyra has a significant amount of tools, especially with all of these support abilities that reduce costs, to take advantage of a basically what amounts at the end of the game to an overwhelming amount of cards that you have access to over your opponent. And generally, your kind of the catch for that is you don't have enough mana to cast them all. but with a generous helping of all of those cost reducers from the support abilities, it helps you get along. So Finn is that's the one that I've been playing the most, and that's the one I'm going to take to my weekly expedition next Tuesday, to see if I can beat down the people that have less experience than me for right now. It's a very short amount of time because probably in 2 or 3 weeks they'll be ahead of me, so I got to take advantage while I still can.
And what have been some of your like key rares that you've been using in that deck?
So I was actually just looking, and I think 100%, almost 100% of the cards are out of faction rares. So yeah, it's I think the key one, like arguably the most important rare in that deck, has been Aloe Vera, which is a faction shifted rare from Muna. And Aloe Vera, the rare Lyra Aloe Vera, lets you it's a 2/2/4 for 3 hand cost, 3 reserve cost, and when you play it from anywhere, you can pay 1 to anchor it. So, and at noon, Aloe Vera resupplies. So you're already getting a resupply from Finn, and Aloe Vera lets you resupply yet again. And there are there's a handful of cards in Lyra that also lets you discard from reserve to re-anchor it, like the Hatter, like rare Kadama. So it's possible to just keep Aloe Vera out for several turns pretty easily. If you're also losing a lane, it's very easy for a Lyra deck to put it to sleep, which kind of acts as anchored if you're losing, to just keep that like steady flow of cards coming. And it's the card that helps me bury people in card advantage by far the most. So that's like the MVP of the deck.
But it's actually really interesting to hear that like the out of faction rares are the ones that have had the highest impact for you in this particular deck.
Yeah, for sure. Now I said almost all of them. There's exactly one rare that's in faction, and that is a Lyra Festival, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Lyra Festival. So yeah. Finn takes really good advantage of that because you see so many cards. It is kind of a backup Lyra Festival deck. It's really like a grindy control deck that's kind of control combo. So you can kind of grind people out, but then you can also oops I win out of nowhere. Pretty easily when you get a critical mass of cards. So I have 1 rare Lyra Festival, 2 common ones, just because the card draw is also quite helpful on the common version. But the rare version can combo very well with Dr. Frankenstein, which is another out of faction rare. When you play that card from reserve, it allows you to activate the arrow ability of a permanent. So any of your Lyra Festivals, either the common one that draws a card or the rare one that lets you fleeting, anchored, or asleep a character, can trigger again. And I also have 1 copy of Aether Shard to again help with some more card draw because, as you guys have you probably all know, and you'll probably be talking about, Lyra has some quite potent interaction and removal spells that it has access to. So Finn does a really good job at kind of drawing the game out and taking advantage of all those really excellent tools that Lyra has.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's really interesting to hear that, like, you're taking a hero and really already starting to maximize its potential within a deck, and then playing something like the Festival, which can be an automatic, like, hey, like, I just won, right? It's kind of cool how that can work. We'll move on to you, Kawa. Kawa, what have you been playing this early in Altered TCG?
Yeah, so probably a similar answer to Justin in terms of I think my favorite faction is separate to my favorite deck I found this early on. I think my favorite faction is probably Bravos for kind of how aggressive it can be with these, high statted cards with fleeting, the amount of boosts you can give your certain characters, and then the kind of interactions you have with the seasoned keyword, meaning if they go to the reserve, they keep their boosts. But my favorite deck I've built early on is it's a Muna deck. It has like the default starter deck hero, which is Teha and Nura, I believe is how you pronounce that. And the reason why I'm such a big fan of it, and this is probably highlighted a lot in the starter deck, honestly, it's because the hero combos so well with just playing anchored characters. My deck that I play is heavily focused on playing a lot of anchored characters. I did manage to get a specific unique out of my Kickstarter boxes, which I've slotted into this deck, and it's performed extremely well. So I'll read it out quickly for you guys. It's Spindle Harvesters, which I think already is a really good 1-drop usually. But this unique is 2 cost from hand, 2 cost from reserve. It's one nature, 2 mountain, 0 water, and it's when it's played from the reserve, it has anchored. But the biggest thing is when it leaves the expedition zone, and if it has 1 or more boosts, it draws a card. So it draws me a lot of cards in a deck where, not that I can necessarily run out of gas too much, but it gets me to kind of the key combo cards I need to see, right? I feel like the reserve can sometimes fill up weirdly in ways when you're playing anchor decks, because maybe a lot of cards will come to your reserve at once, or maybe not a lot of cards will come to your reserve at once. So I just don't like to have a kind of a lot of options in there. So Spindle Harvesters, that's particularly unique, has been like a kind of highlight. One of my favorite cards in general, this is just the common version, but it's the Hydra Cana. It's like the plant dragon that I feel once you pop this card down on either expedition, if your opponent doesn't have removal for that, that is growing so fast. I had such a funny story that I brought some Altered decks to one of the previous Lorcana events I was at, and I was playing against my fiance, and she was playing this Muna deck, and I swear, by the end of the game, this plant dragon was at like 25 stats altogether. It was so big that we ran out of tokens to put on it. We had to start using like multiple dice to represent the stats of the card. And as you can see on the screen right now, the rare version is even better because it has that tough X, which means it's gonna be tougher to take down if your opponent has some of those removal cards. So this deck's just been very fun altogether. I also have the rare version of Aloe Vera in this deck, which is extremely powerful. But yeah, that's been my favorite deck. And like I said, my favorite faction is Bravos, right? So I think one of my favorite out of faction cards within Bravos, which is actually originally a Muna card, is the Pravarti, which the rare version of that. Like I said, in Bravos, you just play. Your main focus is boosting these like highly statted characters, right? Oh yeah, sure. I'll just give one of my highly statted characters an anchored, and it'll just stay there on the board. So it's been pretty fun. But yeah, Muna has been my favorite one so far.
And Trickster, how about you? What have you been playing lately?
Great question. I feel like when it comes to the altered factions, I'm a little colorblind. I don't really have very strong loyalties to any of the factions, and some people might even notice in the like official discords and things, everyone can pick a faction role, but I always just leave mine as like the boring gray color for people who haven't chosen something yet. And I don't know, I just feel like I really just want to kind of wait to make that decision until I have more time to just explore all the decks. And I don't want to like bias myself early on and then like be heading into a competitive tournament and be like swayed one way just because I have like a relationship with one of the factions or something. So I'm trying to stay pretty impartial right now. There are a lot of very fun though heroes and factions that really are testing me and trying to make me claim them, but I have a lot of fun with Muna. As Kawa was just talking about, I have a special connection to Hydra and Sneezer Shroom and some of these cards. They are very fun, and I like Ordis a lot right now too. I think when a deck just sings, it's just really fun for me to play it, and when I like every card in a deck, it doesn't feel like I have dead draws and stuff. So I think maybe just because Ordis is so strong, at least early on, it has been pretty impressive to me. But with all you guys talking about like aloe vera and the resupplies from that, that's just making me think, if you guys like resupply, why don't we just play Traced? So I maybe want to talk a little bit about this Axiom hero just for a second. I definitely feel like Axiom, even though I haven't decided, it's probably like going towards the bottom of my favorites list, but for some reason Traced is just going like straight to the top. I like the way this hero plays specifically a lot. It's a ton of fun for me. I've played some games like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon where you can search your whole deck a little bit and like always have access to all the cards you want. And it feels kind of like that to me when I play Trace, just because you'll draw and see so much of your deck. I'll be like 6 cards left or something in my deck so often with this hero. So it feels like even if you can't search your deck, you'll basically see everything you're playing. You'll see at least like 2 of your uniques every game. So this hero seems super strong to me. If you don't know what he does, we have it up on the screen here, it looks like, and after you get 5 counters, once for each time a card leaves your reserve during the afternoon, you can tap this hero once per day. We can exhaust him to draw a card and put a card from your hand into the reserve. And with that, in combination with pretty much every card I run, either saying draw a card or resupply, you're basically just filling your reserve over and over and over. One of my favorite cards for the deck is Ada Lovelace. It's one that I'm always going to be running at a rare. It has perfect synergy with everything you want to do. It lets you put a card from your hand in the reserve to draw a card. And this is like an effect that I really wish I had in Fen, because I love how you can like always make sure the cards you want in your hand are in your hand and the cards you want like in your reserve are in your reserve essentially. And so this one works so well to set up the other cards. And when I play this deck, we mentioned Frankenstein already for Lyra. I love Frankenstein in this deck. I also love Salvager in this deck. Both of these cards essentially just say when you play them from the reserve, they resupply. For Frankenstein, you'll do that by stealing the effect from the Bravos Bastion. Here you can see, that Ada Lovelace I was talking about. Yeah, just between all of these cheap cards, it does a couple of things that are good in Altered. It lets you play a lot of cards per turn, because since you draw so much, you always have like a full hand. And since your cards are so cheap, you can be a little bit more reactive and make your opponent commit more of their mana first. So I like that I get to be more reactive. I like that I get to draw so many cards. And I just feel like I guess I've kind of not, the last big thing is the Bravos Bastion too, is just a powerhouse in this deck. It gives every card you play from the reserve, it gains the ability when it comes into play to gain a boost. And so you just get so much extra value. Each of your like small characters now are super threatening when they get these boosts. If you get 2 of them, the payout is just ridiculous. I'm a big fan of that, and I even found a unique Daughter of Yggdrasil that gives all of my cards the Bravos Bastion effect. So even if I don't draw Bravos Bastion right away, if I have that unique, I can still get like 1 turn of the effect and kind of stall until I draw into those. Yeah, this deck has been a lot of fun for me recently.
Yeah, I think that's really, really interesting as well. Just that particular, the Bravos Bastion. Like I said, I've only played 2 games today since BGA was released. My opponent was on Bravos, and oh my god, yeah, they had 2 of those landmarks out, and I just felt like, oh my god, the amount of power, the amount of boosts they were getting. And then in the Bravos faction, like obviously, like I said, they have like the seas and stuff. They just kept doing this with, I think it's just like the common red card. And it was just absolutely insane. I was just like, right, you're playing like a 2 cost at 8/8 every turn pretty much. Like, how do I deal with this, you know? So I think that's like one of the really cool parts for Altered in general, because like the thing that separates it, in my opinion, I mean, there's a lot of things that separate it from other card games, right? But it's the fact that in other card games, usually you can kind of combine these colors together, right? So like, for example, in Lorcana, you pick like 2 ink colors. In Magic, you can choose multiple different colors to play together. So I think these kind of out of faction rares make it really interesting for deck building decisions, to say that you're not constricted by obviously a deck will have a certain kind of play style and play pattern, but when you kind of take some of these powerful cards from other factions, you like can do some really, really creative stuff with it, and that's something I love.
Yeah, especially with the rares coming in, like the outer faction ones, they really give an additional flavor to the way a lot of those decks can play. And I like the idea as well that they're balanced in an interesting way as well, in the sense that like they often are out of faction rares and their effect is congruent with the faction as a whole. Like if you have an out of faction rare for Ordis, they often generate the tokens, right? They don't do like, oh, they just generate a boost, like kind of like the Haven Trainee, for example, right? Instead of providing a boost when it comes out from reserve, it creates tokens. And I think that's a really interesting thing in this game as well, where like it really does kind of round out how those rares play. All right, now for me, I've been playing an absolute ton of Ordis. And I just think because Ordis has jived with me early on, like I like the simplicity of like Sigmar and Wingspan, the idea of like having a straightforward play pattern, a very clear victory condition, right? Go wide, play charge, easy dubs. I love that. I feel like it's a very balanced deck, very early on in your kind of experience with Altered TCG. But I have to say, there's been a card that's been dragging me towards the bureaucrats. And I think, I don't want to go out there and say it right off the top, but I think this one might be one of the best cards in the game, in the set. I don't know, I'm just going to throw it out there. Robin Hood, the 4/4 that has 3/2/2 stats, that reads, cards in your that your opponents play cost 1 more as the rare, and the common, just as detrimental here, characters your opponents play cost 1 more, which often is just enough. Having the characters being 1 more expensive than all cards being 1 more expensive on the rare. Guys, I think this card is damn good. And I think it ties together the entire bureaucrat synergy. I'd be interested in hearing how your experiences have been with this card.
Yeah, I was just I was kind of comparing this to a card that I used to play in a different card game, Hearthstone. It's probably not as it's definitely similar. So for any of you who have played Hearthstone before, there's a card called Lotheb. It was a 5-cost 5/5, and it just made your opponents. I think it was made all of your opponents' cards cost 5 more. Maybe it was just spells, but had a very similar effect. And Robin Hood just reminds me of this. It's a super disruptive tool, and like you said, Alex, as well. Oftentimes the characters alone is enough. Cards as a whole, so characters, landmark, spells, is super powerful because your opponent could say, okay, this is my turn, I have it laid out, I've put my cards in my mana zone, I know exactly what I'm going to spend everything on. Opponent's first card they play, Robin Hood. Okay, so now I can play one card, maybe 2 out of the ones that I wanted to do. It's just super powerful. But yeah, Justin, what are your thoughts on this card in general?
So I was playing a draft, and one of my opponents had several copies of Robin Hood, and I just very easily played around it, and it didn't impact the game at all.
Okay, interesting. I'm sure.
I wonder who
Trickster,
that
do you have a
was.
similar story?
They were all common Robin Hoods, but yeah, it is true. I think that as Justin pointed out, there are ways maybe to play around this, and that is something that players though are going to have to figure out in this early meta. And when they put their cards in the mana and don't have a backup plan, it's going to hurt. But they're going to probably learn a lesson and find a better way to fight this moving forward. The weakness definitely is the stats, and for the common one, removal can trade favorably into it. I think that the rare in Constructed is almost mandatory because once you get that +1 to spells, it pretty much makes everything in the set, at best, just trade evenly with it, outside of like maybe rare Cloth Cocoon or something like that. But yeah, there are maybe ways to play around this, but it is a card that you have to be prepared for, and you have to be ready to play around if you want to be able to win, as Justin was able to do in that draft.
And with Waru and Mac as well, I mean, the bureaucrats have this like staying power where if you don't remove them, right, they sit there and they just like make you feel bad, right? And it can be frustrating, right, if you don't draw the cards you need or you don't play around it effectively, because they have this power with Waru and Mac to just kind of consistently be disruptive. And I love this play pattern as well. I think it's really fascinating the way that the asleep works and everything like that. I think this is a very powerful synergistic hero. And overall, for me, like, I've been much like you, Trickster. I intend to like play everything. I want to play absolutely everything. I really do. And once I play some Ordis, I'm definitely gonna play some Lyra. I'm definitely gonna play some Muna. I'm gonna keep moving around. But for some reason, my heart of hearts, I feel like if I was in a competitive tournament right now and I had to try to win everything, I feel like I'd be bringing some Ordis because I just think it's in a good spot. I feel like the play pattern is solid, and I don't know, man. It just jives with me. You know what I mean? Is that crazy to say that sometimes a faction and a play style just jives with you? For me, it's Ordis.
Yeah, that's actually something I wanted to ask you, Justin, because I feel like personally Yzmir is probably perceived in general as kind of the control archetype within Altered, the reactive archetype. And my theory, and this could be completely wrong, but my theory is I feel like some of the highest skilled players in Altered will probably be on Yzmir, because I don't think it's necessarily going to be the most straightforward faction and play style to play. But I think when you get some players on this faction that maybe have played some previous card games or really understand the mechanisms that you have to kind of utilize within Yzmir, I think you're going to see some very, very creative deck building skills, and it's not going to be an easy deck to play. What's your kind of just like general overview of Yzmir so far?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that comprehensively, from a faction standpoint, the 3 Yzmir heroes as a group are the least straightforward in deck building. I think that you have, even if you're looking at a hero like Aphanis, who is, okay, this is a pretty clear hero. You want to put characters in your deck, and then you want to put spells in your deck so you can give your characters boosts from the spells, right? Well, that sounds very simple conceptually, but when you get down to it with the restrictions on rarities of being able to only have 15 rares in your deck, those choice of 15 rares can make the deck go in multiple different directions. And even still, I kind of just watch people post deck lists and talk online. There is not close to a consensus of what the best way to build Afanis is. And I would say, of all of the Yzmir heroes, Afanis is the most straightforward and is still probably among one of the more difficult heroes to build. So then when you go into Lindui and Acacia, you have this gigantic wide swath of ways to build the deck. Whether do you want to try to build this in a control deck? Do you want to try to build this as an aggressive deck that takes advantage of kind of some controlling elements that you might have access to in the faction? So Yzmir, in my opinion, is one that definitely rewards a really large scale understanding of how the game kind of really works on an intricate level. And that isn't to say that the people that are playing Yzmir are smarter or better than everyone else. Certainly not. But I think to unlock kind of the best functions of Yzmir, you do need to put the time in to play with the cards and play with each of the heroes to understand really how they work. But there's a lot of heroes like that in Altered. I think that people have a really good understanding of how the 6 starter deck heroes work, because those are the ones that they've seen for like a year now and have really gotten a chance to play with the starter decks. But there's a significant number of heroes that are similarly not straightforward in the way that you build a deck, and that's something that I really love about Altered is because again of the rarity restriction system, it would be very rare to say that there is a singular best way to always build a deck just because of the different accesses you have. So I think Yzmir does that really well, but a lot of other characters, ones that I think people are looking at right now and say, well, this is a weaker hero, like something like Atsadi or Gulrang, that I think are only weaker because they're less straightforward and they have they don't have as high of a floor as something like a Sigismar or a Tasia that are powerful heroes, but they're very straightforward. So you definitely have heroes that have some tools that people haven't quite explored as much as other ones.
I'm surprised to hear that because I think Gulrang and Toxin is pretty cool. Like this is one of the ones that I've been brewing around a lot.
My favorite Ordis hero.
Yeah, and for what reason?
Oh my gosh, it's unbeatable. It's unbeatable at the the longer you draw the game out, the more difficult this is to defeat.
So it's basically the ultimate turtle.
Absolutely, it's the ultimate turtle. I had a game where earlier this week that I was playing with someone at the local store that I go to. I was playing Gulrang, and I just drug the game out, and on 10 mana, I played and opened the gates with already having a monolith in play, and then I played a rare Atlas, which gives all of your tokens gigantic, and it was 18s across both sides.
Wild.
Off of 2 cards, yeah, with monolith. It was big deal. It's a big deal. So if you can stall the game out, which I think is probably, I don't want to say easy, but with some creative deck building and again understanding how the metagame of Altered really works. To be able to understand like kind of when to pick your spots of saying, okay, am I going to defend this turn or am I going to try to move a little bit this turn? I think Gulrang is one that I'm really excited to see people play in as we get into competitive play, because I think it's got way more legs than people think. Only because I think Wario is obviously very clearly powerful. Sigismar is very familiar and has a very high floor, so Gulrang's kind of like the third one left out, but I think it's got a lot of tools that again people are not exploring to the fullest extent quite yet.
That's absolutely fair, because definitely with something like Sigismar and Wingspan, like it's definitely a much more straightforward play pattern, which I'm sure is the reason why you include it as one of the starter heroes, right?
Right.
But then again, like very very powerful in its own right. So quite interesting to hear your take on those various heroes there. Now, as we near the end of this week's podcast here, I just want to mention here that in the future we're going to be running a mailbag segment. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask us here, or have any points that you'd like for us to discuss, let us know in the YouTube comment section down below. Leave a comment, and perhaps we'll get an opportunity to read it out, discuss it as a crew, and give you some feedback based on your question. But let's just go into closing remarks here. Justin?
Wait, I have a mailbag question for you guys to think about and discuss in the future. What would you like a large-scale Altered tournament to look like? And you can ask yourself, you can ask your viewers. You don't need to answer it today, just something to think about. I'll tune in next week.
All right, so let's leave it to the comments down below. But Kawa, you want to start us off with something?
Yeah, I don't know. I can imagine a lot of things already. Like I said, I'm a huge enthusiast when it comes to kind of grassroots level events, and I'm always so excited to see a kind of a competitive scene grow over time. And I know for a lot of card games, the competitive scene starts to really flourish, and like, you know, these like proper organized large scale events start to happen. Depending on how the set release is kind of scheduled, it's like maybe usually I would say around set 3, if it's, you know, a set comes out every 3 months or every 4 months roughly. I know you guys have some stuff on your kind of organized play roadmap already leading into next year. So I don't know, like if there's anything in particular, I will definitely have to think on it. I think just the idea in general though of just like so many people who are such huge fans of Altered coming together, as more people start to understand the meta and you know, learn these different play styles and expect certain cards and certain decks and tech for different things. Like, that's just my favorite thing about card games in general. And it's exactly what Alex said, right? It's like this kind of aspirational thing. Anytime for me personally, I watch competitive level card game events, it makes me want to play the game. And that's pretty much across the board. Even if it's a card game I haven't played in years, like I've watched, I don't know, if a Hearthstone esports event is on and I watch it for a weekend, it instantly makes me want to go back and play the game, right? And I think that's something that I'm really excited to highlight for Altered, and I'm excited for stories to happen in Altered as well. You know, like so many great players are born through events like this, and it gets to highlight players who, you know, us right now in general, we're very much focused on the content creation side. I think these large scale events really get to shine a light on the very competitive minded players that maybe aren't in the spotlight too much, that can really show you the highest level of Altered, that maybe, you know, show you plays that you haven't even thought of before. And that's just my favorite thing to start to cover. But I'll definitely think upon that, Justin, and I'll send you some notes for sure.
Great.
And Trickster, what do you think?
Oh, when you're like, what would you like these events to look like? I was like, the first thing that I thought of was frequent. I hope there's just multiple of them so that I can, just because I'm like, I don't know if I can get enough. And then the next thing I was thinking is, it'd be awesome if they were nearby to make it easier to justify going to them. But I think some of those things will come with time as the game grows and like there's more players to like sustain the events and things like that. But I feel like whatever happens, you can't really go wrong at this point. I feel like I've been so excited for Altered that like whatever the event is, I don't care if I hear like, oh, it's like starter decked and 3-pack draft, or like it's like whatever I hear, I'm like, sign me up, I'm on my way or something at this point. So honestly, it being in person, playing in like a tournament, whatever that looks like, I'm sure it'll be just like a great experience, and just something to just like build a player base that'll evolve with time. Yeah, go take it away.
Yeah,
Kawa.
sorry, no, I just like that you just kind of got me thinking there as well. Like just for the general kind of organized play structure, I think you can learn a lot from like what a lot of previous card games have done in the past in terms of like what you said there, Trickster, like frequent events. I think it would be great to see, and I'm sure you guys have, you know, thought about this or maybe are considering it, but to have more of the kind of local level competitive events. So in many other card games, this can be known as like maybe store championships or set championships and stuff. And this could be a really great accessible way for people who maybe can't, you know, I don't know, let's say, for example, Alex, right, you're in Toronto. Let's say the big North America Championship for Altered is in California. It's like, well, I unfortunately cannot afford to travel to California. It's a long way away. Having these kind of local competitive level events, for me, my favorite thing about those is not that I get to, I mean, I love playing in as many as I can, as of course, but it gets a lot of those players who maybe have just been doing kind of weekly play and haven't really jumped into the competitive scene to give it a shot and see what it's like, right? And like maybe playing a couple of these over time and improve their skills and improve their confidence within card games. So that's what I'd like to really see on the kind of local level. And then as you expand into the bigger events, there's always so many different things you can do, you know, across North America, across Europe, stuff like that. But yeah, I think there's a lot of different lines that you can take, and I'm excited to see. I'm sure you guys have explored a lot of options already and are thinking about stuff. I'm excited to hear some announcements for sure.
And that takes us to the end of the pod. And as we close off here, Justin, where can we find you on the great wide internet?
Oh my gosh. So really the only two social media platforms that I am active on are Twitter, or whatever it's currently called, X. I don't love it, but you know what? It is what it is. So you can find me at jparnell1. I am essentially really primarily talking about Altered on there, making sure that things get communicated from the account. But if you're someone that's looking to kind of get in contact with me, that's one of the easiest ways. And then of course the second is I am somewhat active in our Altered official Discord server. So you people see me in there every once in a while. You can tag me, but don't go crazy. You know, that's every once in a while I get tagged of something that's like, hey, this is kind of this meeting could have been an email type deal. That's like the Discord version, is when you get tagged for a very simple question that anyone could have answered. But if you have something that you want to talk about, and especially if you just want me to see it, if you have an idea or feedback on anything, or if you want to answer your question about organized play, of what you think that would be some things you'd love to see, you know, that's one of the best places to get in touch with me about it. So those are the two primary ways, and of those, I would say Discord is the one that I would love to see the most, because that can mean other people can be involved in the conversation and provide some feedback as well.
Awesome, and we'll be linking to those as well. Trickster, where can we find you, my friend?
You can find me in the Discord pinging Justin right now some unnecessary questions. Something like, what happens when my card has fleeting and anchored, or whatever?
Yes, right.
Justin, what does it do? But other than that, I'll be on YouTube. My channel is at Trickster CG, so just add a CG at the end of my name. And then I'm also on Discord a lot as well. You can add me as a friend, DB Trickster, so just the letters D and B before my name. And yeah, I'm always looking to just like chat, trade unique, share deck lists. So yeah, feel free to either join some of the bigger Discord groups, like the Exalts is where I hang out a lot. That's my team's Discord, or just the official one. Or yeah, follow me on YouTube, and you can tag me with your questions in the comments there as well. And I guess the last thing is, if you want to email me, I do have an email as well. So it's contact.trickstercg@gmail.com.
If you want to get a hold of Trickster, you got no excuses anymore. Kawa,
No
where can we find you, my
excuses.
man?
Yeah, so my most active platforms is probably also Twitter and Discord. My Twitter is at kawatech_cg. I post everything, mainly Lorcana at the moment, but just card games in general, to be honest. Anything I'm extremely passionate about, and you best believe I'm gonna be posting about Altered over the next coming weeks. You can find me on Discord. The easiest place to find me is probably our podcasts Discord. So if you go to Podcana Podcast on YouTube, you can go to the description there and find us in the Discord. We talk everything about Lorcana, but you can find me in there and just tag me and talk to me about that. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. And I'll be linking to each individual's socials down below in the description, so you guys on YouTube have no excuses. Make sure to check them out. And we'll see you on that next one. Thanks for joining us.